Hey there, it's Miss Genevieve. I'm so glad to meet with you today. And today we have a lesson about lifelong learning, about the power of learning. And our affirmation for today is I will always look for ways to learn and be loving to others. I will always look for ways to learn and be loving to others. So we are going to start today, jump right in with our story. So the story is called Where You Go, I Go. Ready? Here we go. As Naomi held the little baby in her arms, her heart overflowed with love. She could hardly remember there was a time when her heart had felt so sad and empty that she thought emptiness would never end. Many years before, Naomi and her husband had decided to take their two young sons to the land of Moab to live. The conditions in their homeland were too difficult. There was not enough food for people to eat, and Naomi wanted her sons to grow and to be strong. Moab was strange to them, but they grew accustomed to it, and their sons grew up and were happy there. When Naomi's husband died, her heart was very sad, but her sons were a comfort to her. They both married, and Naomi loved her daughters-in-law, Oprah and Ruth, who cared for her like she was their own mother. They worked together and they shared all that they had. But then both her sons died too. Naomi felt the sadness fill her heart like a dark cloud. Because in Judea and Moab, men and women always worked together and cared for one another. Now there were no men for the women to care for, and no men who would work and provide homes for Naomi, Oprah, and Ruth. How would they live? 3 women could not do everything alone in those days. Naomi stayed up long into the night and made a plan. She would go back to Judea. The news from her homeland was good. Things were better there, and she had relatives who might be able to help her. Ruth and Oprah were still very young and beautiful, and they could stay in Moab and go back to their families. They would both be able to find new husbands and would be happy again. So in the morning, Naomi revealed her plan. It's best that I return to the land that I came from, and my relatives will welcome me home. But you would be strangers there and far away from everything you know. So go back to your families, my dear daughters. It's time to say goodbye. Naomi cried and hugged Ruth and Oprah close. Her heart was so sad and empty. Naomi thought it would be that way forever, but they wouldn't leave her. Naomi stood firm and wouldn't listen to their tearful cries. Go home, girls. It will be happier. I will be happier knowing that you are safe and with your families. Please go and find new husbands and have children to love. Naomi was relieved when Oprah finally turned away, still crying. She would do what Naomi asked her to do. But Ruth showed no signs of leaving. Naomi packed Ruth's things and put the bag in her hand. She tried to push Ruth out the door. She said in her strongest mother voice, go home. You must go home. You can't go to Judea. It's a strange land and you won't like it there. But Ruth didn't listen. She held on to Naomi's hand and said, do not urge me to leave you or keep me from following you. For where you go, I will go. And where you live, I will live. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more, if anything but death parts me from you. Naomi felt the love that Ruth offered, and some of the dark cloud in her heart lifted. She agreed to let Ruth go with her, and they traveled to the town of Bethlehem in Judea together. The golden fields of barley were ripe for the harvest when Naomi and Ruth arrived in Judea. The harvesters would spend all day in the fields cutting and bundling the long stalks of grain. It was a tradition that the corners of the fields were left for the poor to harvest. The widows and children could also follow the harvesters and pick up any grain that was left behind. When Ruth saw the barley harvest being gathered, she immediately told Naomi, I can work in the fields and pick up the grain that's left behind. That way we'll have food to eat. So Ruth spent all day gleaning the barley. She carried the grain back to Naomi with a glad heart, even though her back was aching and her legs were tired. One evening, she told Naomi of a handsome man who had spoken to her with great kindness. He said that I could stay in his field and I would be safe there. He even encouraged the men to leave behind some extra grain for us. When I asked him why, he said that he knew I cared for you and should be rewarded. He is called Boaz. No, Naomi reassured Ruth that Boaz would be true to his promise. This is a great blessing. Boaz is a relative of my husband's and he is a good man. That night, Naomi stayed awake and prayed and planned. She knew that Ruth loved her and would never leave her alone, but Naomi knew it would be best if Ruth had someone to take care of her. Naomi was getting old, and Ruth was working very hard to provide enough food for both of them. So in the morning, Naomi revealed her plan. Boaz does not have a wife. If you had a chance to get to know each other, you might discover that you liked each other, and you might want to get married. But it'll never happen if you're out in the field all day and Boaz is too busy managing all his land and his workers. You have to be bold and go see him. Get cleaned up, put on your best dress, and visit him. I know when he will be guarding the grain in his barn. Ruth was very, very nervous about Naomi's plan, but she loved Naomi and she already liked Boaz a little. So she bravely did what Naomi suggested. Now, Ruth and Boaz were married. And the baby that Naomi was holding in her hands was the new little boy named Obed. Naomi's heart was so full of love, and the dark cloud of emptiness was gone. Love flowed through her life again, and Naomi realized it was always there, and it always would be. So here's some questions to think about together now that you've listened to this story so well. So can you give some examples from the story of people doing things with love? And can you think of someone else in the Bible who was born in the town of Bethlehem who did things with love? Obed grew up to be the grandfather of David. Have you ever heard of King David? There are stories of King David in the Old Testament of the Bible. A long time after King David lived, his descendant Joseph was actually the father of Jesus. A fun thing you could do together to talk about love and loving people in your life and continuing to learn from the love we give is make together a chain of hearts and write on those hearts the names of people who you love and who have taught you a lot. And you can do that together as a family. Thanks for joining me today for the story of Ruth and Naomi. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.